sorry. I figured out the only way to do this was to invite myself up through my phone. Welcome, all of you who managed to stay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We've had a lot of technical difficulties on Wednesday night and Monday night. I will not totally blame myself, but I'm so glad that some of you stayed. Because, you know, whenever Lama Rod asked me to give a Dharma talk, I thank you. I'm so honored. He's been my principal teacher for about 6 years, I think. And so I'm here. People stayed. Thank you for people who stayed. I'm always so honored, and I want to honor him with the talk. So I always just study all day and try to listen all day to what might be the message for today, for this time, for what's happening right now, and for our community. And so I've been thinking about, thank you, Noah, thank you, Kalivia and Christopher, Randa, thank you for staying, because I so want to give this talk. I so want to be here with you. I heard, I was listening to Lama Rod being interviewed on 10% Happier, which is a podcast. So you can hear this talk that he gave the day after January 6th. If you haven't already, just go to 10% Happier podcast and look him up. And what he was saying, and I think it's so relevant to this week, is he was saying that on January 6th, what he needed to do was to really ground himself and also to reach out to a friend. And I've been really thinking about how our practice is so important for us, and about how and why we do our practice, and what it means to be a community, what it means to be Bhumisparsha. So this morning, you know, already at 5 o'clock, nervous about giving this talk, not realizing that I was going to have a total destruction of the tech, which is a whole nother story that maybe I'll get to. But well, I'll tell you the story. The story is that I had already signed up to do tech, because I do tech on Wednesday night usually. And then when Lama Rod asked me to give the talk, I thought, well, I can do both. But it turns out that there's a technical difficulty with trying to do both that I hadn't really figured out. I have figured it out now. But so, you know, here it is, like asking for help. Like, I don't know if any of the rest of you have trouble asking for help. I think I have more trouble asking for help than anyone in the world, but it might not be true. Maybe you have trouble asking for help sometimes too. But I just thought, oh, there's not enough people to do this. I can do both. So, and I'm sorry, this is what happened. So maybe I've learned something about asking for help. But anyway, at 5 o'clock in the morning, already kind of nervous and excited about this talk, this poem of Rumi came to me. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are moving back and forth across the threshold where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. And so maybe we can settle in with that question. What is it that we really want? Ask yourself, what is it that I really want? What is it that I really want? And here in our community, we say, please make yourself comfortable. If you're going to be comfortable standing, lying down, anytime you practice, but especially when we gather together, make yourself comfortable. Get yourself a pillow. Make yourself so comfortable that maybe you'll fall asleep if you get relaxed. And besides asking for help, relaxing is one of my hardest things, and maybe yours. So together tonight, maybe we can relax. And the thing is, if you ever fall asleep on a Monday night or on Wednesday night, there's always a recording if you want to catch what you missed. So really, really make yourself comfortable. And saying this at the beginning of every session when we remember to do it is part of our commitment to disability justice. And that's one thing I'm really learning about in Bhumisparsha as we begin to think about our community ethics. And some people here have taught me something so important, which is, of course, disability is not binary any more than gender is binary, any more than the world is dualistic. Any of us could be disabled at any time, and gender, like disability, is on a huge continuum. So that kind of blew my mind when I heard that, because it blew my mind when I really understood that it's the world's conceptions, the culture's conceptions of gender that really hurt people that are non-binary, or even other people who don't fit into some far range of very male, very female. So same with disability, that it's the way the world is structured that causes the need for disability justice. And actually, before I go on, I want to read this one. The other person it's a person I've been spending time with is Hafiz. Hafiz was a poet who was born in Persia in the 13th century. But just listen to this about gender. And remember, this is 13th century Persia. Once a young woman asked me, "How does it feel to be a man?" And I replied, "My dear, I'm not so sure." Then she said, "Well, aren't you a man?" And this time I replied, listen to this. "I view gender as a beautiful animal that people often take for a walk on a leash and might enter in some odd contest to try to win strange prizes." My dear, a better question for Hafiz would have been, how does it feel to be a heart? For all I know is love, and I find my heart infinite and everywhere. Isn't that just amazing? I view gender as a beautiful animal that people often take for a walk on a leash and might enter in some odd contest to try to win strange prizes. In the 13th century. So why did he have such an understanding that the rest of us had to go through 8 more centuries to begin to get an inkling of? Because he knew how it feels to be a heart. Because he said, "For all I know is love, and I find my heart infinite and everywhere." Because he was a realized being, because he was a realized being. That's why he could be so far ahead of his time, right? So tonight I want to talk about that, about how realization, of course, we're all realized, we just don't realize it yet or all the time, most of us anyway. I want to talk about how it leads us to love. And I want to talk about how some great beings have reached this state and can really teach us something about our practice and our communal practice and how our practice affects the world. So back to the poem. I think most of us, if we ask what is that we really want, I think we're at the point where what we say is we want all beings to be free. We want all beings to be free, and that is our deepest heart's desire. I remember Lama Rod said, and I can't remember when, it was the anniversary or the 6-month anniversary of Bhumisparsha, and he said, the bodhisattva vow is not an option anymore. I really think that's true. I really think, to live in this world, to be a person who practices meditation, who aspires to love, who wants realization, of course, we want the freedom for all beings. So listen to this. While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there is a person in jail, I am not free. So who does this sound like? It sounds like abolitionists, right? It sounds like people who really are on the edge of teaching us about activism now, in this moment. And the person who said this is Howard Thurman. And Howard Thurman was born in 1899 and died in 1981. I've been spending the day with him and have been really blown away by his grace and his insight, in the same way that when I read that poem about gender by Hafiz and thought, wow, you understood this so early. So humbled to hear the words and see Dr. Thurman interviewed, there are interviews now on YouTube that you can find. He was born in 1899. His grandmother was a slave. He was born in Florida. And he spent his childhood listening to the water, the coastal water, and fishing in a boat. And one of his dearest friend was a tree. So coming to this question of how do we attain realization? This Bhumisparsha, touching the earth, was a huge part of it for Howard Thurman. He remained really connected to nature through his whole life. And he sought stillness. So people called him a mystic. He called himself a mystic activist. And yes, he was. We would just call him a bodhisattva. We would call him someone who had become realized in Buddhism, because his words were so wise and what he understood about reality. His grandmother, who was a slave, helped raise him, and she told him that he was a child of God in a time of terrible terrorism for Black people and segregation, complete segregation. But she said, "You're a child of God." And when he asked her, like, how did she know that? She said, when she was a slave, there was a preacher who was also a slave. And he would preach to her community and say, "You are not a slave. You are a child of God." And he said it, she said, with such conviction that she knew it was true. So these two worlds, the world of reality and the ultimate reality, these two worlds where we go back and forth all the time. She was living in a world as a slave in the relative world and in reality. But like Jesus, was in this world but not of it. She was not of that world. The world that she really lived in was she knew she was a child of God. And she knew that from the time that preacher told her. And her grandson, Howard Thurman, knew it because she told him. And he could tell she believed it. So how many lives he touched? He was credited with, because he went to India and met Gandhi and studied there, he was credited with being the one who really brought the principle of nonviolence and of love to the civil rights movement. It is said that Martin Luther King always had this book with him, Jesus and the Disinherited. He was credited with being the one who understood that the civil rights movement was intended to transform America by carrying an energy of love that was so radically different from the hate that was coming in the relative world. To carry, people are moving back and forth across the threshold where the two worlds touch, to carry from the other world the sure knowledge of being a child of God and the sure faith in the power of love. He was the one who brought to the movement the idea we must have a spirit that refuses to die. He was of Martin Luther King's father's generation and taught many people in Martin Luther King's generation. The intention in his thinking was to bring a wholeness to American society by manifesting wholeness. And I was reading this today, it just spoke to me so deeply, as this is what we are trying to do. Well, actually, this is what we're doing. Because what we're experiencing in our community, in our teachers, is that we are really in touch with, yes, the relative world. We're in touch with what's happening. And we're also increasingly understanding that there's an emptiness. There's an emptiness to this reality, and so it's a bit malleable. And when we bring the power of our love, and especially the power of community, we can change ourselves and each other. So Howard Thurman was asked many times, how did you survive your childhood and your early years, just breaking through so many barriers? And, of course, even all through his life, he was such a genius, and he was a realized being through his own practice. And he was asked, how have you endured this? And I think, the same people who ask him this question are the same people who would probably ask him things like, well, please talk about the race question. Not racial injustice, not the history of genocide. No, please, or not white supremacy. He was incredibly graceful when he met these questions. And so anyway, when he was asked, how did you survive all of this oppression? He said, in that environment, I was driven to find in the ground of my being that which transcended all that was external to me. That's what we're doing. In that environment, I was driven to find in the ground of my being that which transcended all that was external to me. He knew he was a child of God because his grandmother told him, because the preacher told her. And then he said, I had to be at work in a way that kept this nourished, this awareness. I bet he did. He had to be at work all the time in a way that kept this nourished, this awareness of who he really was. And I really appreciate that Lama Rod's been talking about this lately, about we have to work. We have to work all the time. When I first started meditating, I thought, okay, I've been told to go sit in a certain place and in a certain way for a certain amount of time, not very long at first, and then, maybe longer, but, that's practice. No, practice is constant. Practice is constantly remembering who we really are. Practice is constantly doing everything that we possibly can to keep that awareness alive. It may be meditation, for sure. It probably has to be seeking stillness, dwelling in stillness. Sure. Not everyone can sit still for long periods of time because that's only one kind of practice. Sitting in nature, listening to the sounds, seeing the sights of nature is a really beautiful practice that works on us in the same way. We see, as Lama Rod tells us, how the world is trying to love us. If we just look, we see what a miracle every single thing is in this natural world and how it's all love. And so how we are love, that is who we are, a child of God, a bit of the vast love, the vast joy, the vast bliss that is the ground of being, that is the universe. That is across the threshold, but we are in that. We are of that. And in this world, we are of that. And in this world. Dr. Thurman said that this world, the systems, are organized to defeat peace. And I think we keep seeing this, right? The systems and the structures are organized to defeat peace, to defeat freedom. But he says, this is against life, so it is doomed. This is against life, so it is doomed. Kind of like the arc is long, but it bends toward justice. But it's even stronger, isn't it? Like Lama Rod's been encouraging us to pay attention to spring, to the energy of spring. So I've been listening to the birds, and recently I was away for a few days and I came back and my garden had exploded. There's a force. There's a force that is love, that is life, that is freedom, that is definitely not any of the things that we're seeing, the cruelty, no, the violence, no. What is coming forth in the spring, what is the truth of life, is love, is abundance, is diversity, is beauty. What is more beautiful than people who are non-binary? Queer people, what is more beautiful than that? What people are more beautiful than people of color? So what is really true? What is really true? These systems of violence, these structures that work against freedom are against life. So they are doomed, he said. And he says, ultimately, all dualisms are exhausted in unity. All dualisms are exhausted in unity. And he didn't just say that because he read it somewhere. I don't think there was too many places to read it in those days. He said it because he experienced it in his own practice, in his own seeking of stillness, in his own practice of being driven to find in the ground of his being that which transcended all that was external. The grandmother who was a slave but knew, really, she was a child of God. I had to be at work in a way that kept this nourished. I am sure she did too. This work that people have learned to do over years, over centuries, is the work that we must do now so that we can be in this world but not of it, and keep bringing the truth forth into this world. Keep embodying that in the very vibration of our being, in our words and in our silence, in our love, in our love. Toward, at some point, I'm actually not sure exactly, but at some point, he decided that he wanted to start a church. It was actually a vision that he had in India. He started the first interracial church in the United States. This reminds me so much of Bhumisparsha and also of the queer church that I pastored in New York in the 70s and 80s. He said, the movement of the spirit in our hearts calls us to act against the spirit of our times. Because he said, building this first interracial church in the United States at that time was working against what was going on at the time. He says, this movement of the spirit causes us to anticipate a spirit which is yet in the making. I'm not sure it's a spirit that is yet in the making now. I think the spirit has been long in the making, as Dr. Thurman showed us, and many, many others over hundreds, of course, of years. But he said, it's through our dedication and resolve that we are given wisdom and courage to dare a deed that challenges the culture, challenges the world, the reality as it is, and to kindle a hope that inspires us to live from the ultimate reality, the sure knowledge that we are a child of God, that we are love, that we are a part of that vastness. And, you know, it's very holographic. That vastness is within us, each of us, each of us. And when we bring that love to each other, it kindles each other and it transforms each other. So the intention of this community and of his life was to bring a wholeness to American society by manifesting wholeness. And that's, I think, what we're doing in our own lives and in our community too. We're not just doing it for ourselves. And I think that we're all remembering that and dedicating our practice to that all the time. So I was also led, when I was thinking about how to talk about these things, to this man, to Nisargadatta. This is him. And he was born just a few years before Dr. Thurman. He was born in India. And his life, he didn't seem to have, he was born poor also. But he was born seeking, like I bet every single one of us have been seeking our whole lives. He was born curious. And he had in Bombay, in a slum of Bombay, a little cigarette shop. He would roll cigarettes and sell them. He sold a few other things in this little shop. And one evening, his friend with whom he'd be talking about these things, about spiritual matters, took him to his guru. And something happened. I'm just going to read this to you. One evening, his friend brought him to his guru, and that evening proved to be the turning point of his life. The guru gave him a mantra and instructions on meditation. Early in his practice, he started having visions and occasionally fell into trances. Something exploded within him, as it were giving birth to cosmic consciousness, a sense of eternal life. His identity dissolved, and the illuminating personality of Sri Nisargadatta emerged. So he was still rolling cigarettes for a living, but he was a realized being, and people began to come to him and ask him questions, and he began to transform them with his life, like that preacher did transform Howard Thurman's grandmother, who transformed him with a pretty simple message, which we'll get to in a minute. But this introduction to this book goes on. Most people live in a world of self-consciousness and do not have the desire or power to leave it. They exist only for themselves. All their effort is directed towards achievement of self-satisfaction and self-glorification. There are, however, seers, teachers, and revealers who, while apparently living in this world, live simultaneously in another world, the world of cosmic consciousness, effulgent with infinite knowledge. I believe Howard Thurman was one of these people, and there are people around us like this. We don't always know who they are, who apparently live in the same world, but live simultaneously in another world, the world of cosmic consciousness, effulgent with infinite knowledge. And that is what it means to be realized. And I think we can see by the life of Howard Thurman and his grandmother and that preacher how it affects the world. The generations of students of Howard Thurman and us affected by him. So this is just fun. After his illuminating experience, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj started living such a dual life. He ran his shop, but ceased to be a profit-minded merchant. Later, abandoning his family and business, he became a pilgrim, walking over the vastness and variety of the Indian religious scene. He walked barefoot on his way to the Himalayas, where he planned to pass the rest of his years in the quest of an eternal life, but he soon retraced his steps and came back home to his family, children, and a wife. Comprehending the futility of his quest, eternal life, he perceived, was not to be sought for. He already had it. Having gone beyond the I am the body idea, he had acquired a mental state so joyful, peaceful, and glorious that everything appeared to be worthless compared to it. He had attained self-realization. You know, Howard Thurman, too. That's how he managed to answer all those really stupid questions by those interviewers. And this whole book, I Am That, by Nisargadatta, is questions and answers of people who came and asked him questions. So I'm going to just read a little bit of this. Someone comes, probably an American, it says, "Am I permitted to ask you how you went beyond the mind?" Because clearly he was a realized being and people would come to him and ask him how he did it. Nisargadatta says, "By the grace of my guru." by the grace of my Guru. What shape did his grace take? He told me what is true. What did he tell you? He told me I am supreme reality. What did you do about it? I trusted him and I remembered it. Is that all? Is that all? Yes, I remembered him. I remembered what he said. You mean to say this was enough? What more needs to be done? It was quite a lot to remember the Guru and his words. My advice to you is even less difficult than this. Just remember yourself. I am is enough to heal your mind and take you beyond. Just have some trust. I wouldn't mislead you. Why should I? Do I want anything from you? I wish you well. Such is my nature. Why should I mislead you? I love what's happening there. You know, we all want the secret of life. We all want to know, how do we become realized? Just tell me, just tell me. And he says, just remember your teacher. Just remember your teacher and what your teacher told you. Just trust your teacher and remember what your teacher told you. You are. You are who you are. You know, there's so much language that I almost don't want to use. Child of God. God is a trigger word for some people. You are supreme reality. You are love. You are joy. You are stillness. You are vastness. You are the whole of the universe. You are that. You are that. So I'm particularly interested in the fact that he says, my advice to you is really easy. Just remember yourself. I am is enough to heal your mind and take you beyond this world. So that you can still be, of course, in this world. As he discovered, he was then go back to rolling cigarettes, but as an enlightened being, selling out of his shop in the slums of Bombay as a realized being. But his advice was, just remember yourself. Remember your teacher. Remember yourself. I am, and that's in quotes, is enough to heal your mind. Nisargadatta died the same year as Howard Thurman, 1981. And how are you doing? How are you all doing? You're still here. I can't believe it. After 20 minutes of technical difficulties. Are you tired? Do you want to close? Are you breathing? Are you comfortable? Are you remembering who you are and what you really want? So we're trying here to be free. Thank you. We're trying to realize who we really are. Yeah, good idea, Margaret. Thank you. So let's just breathe together. Feel ourselves here. If it's your practice to be aware of your breath, do that if that's your anchor. If it's your practice to just feel yourself supported by your seat, by the earth. Let yourself be taken care of by that awareness. Let yourself be taken care of by the earth, which is trying to love you. You know, we are part of this lineage. All of us who have learned from Howard Thurman, he is one of our teachers. And that lineage includes his grandmother, and it includes the preacher who was a slave who knew unshakably that he was the child of God. And he was so rooted in ultimate reality, in his realization of what was really true. He is part of our lineage, all of us, all these beings, all these bodies, experiencing this world. And noticing that the door is round and open to the other world, where there is complete unity and complete love. And that is who we are. So our work is to remember our teachers and remember who we are. So there's a couple things we could do. We could end. Anyone who needs to end, it's 9:05, that's fine. We could chant. We could hear a little more about I am. We could say Shantideva's prayer. We could be quiet. You must ask for what you really want. What would you like now? Would you like to put your prayers in the chat? Or would you like to say Shantideva's prayer together? The Bodhisattva prayer. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Shantideva's been with us, right? Okay. So let's say Shantideva's prayer. Yeah. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you. Prayer for peace and compassion and kindness. Yes. Yes. Let's say it 3 times like we do on Mondays. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures until they pass away from pain. May I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. Last time. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. And may we dedicate our practice to the freedom of all beings, to comfort all who are suffering right now, to bring peace and compassion and kindness, especially to the places that need it most right now. And may we dedicate the merit of our practice also to our teachers, to Lama Rod, who is so generous, to Lama Justin, who is going on a big retreat, long retreat. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really apologize for how long it took me to figure out how to do this. And if anything that I have said has offended you or hurt you, please accept my apology. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to keep you waiting so long, and appreciate very much you all being here and staying. Thank you. Thank you, Noah, and thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much. Thank you. So Lama Rod will be here next week. He'll be here every other week. And members of the community will give the talk in the other weeks. So, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really learning from Bhumisparsha what Sangam is. It's so interesting, you know. Thank you, beautiful Sangam. May you rest well. Yes, enjoy the spring, everyone. Some of you might be in Australia, but if you're in this hemisphere, enjoy the spring and pay attention to the ways that the world is trying to love you. And remember who you are. Peace. Stay strong.